I'm called Fadil Yassin. I'm 25 years old, and here particularly I'm dealing in horticulture, growing tomatoes, cabbages and onions sometimes. Not all others, but I'm taking some specific ones as an enterprise where I can manage a bit of it. I started practicing this horticulture some 2-3 years ago, and in what we had been doing, when it reaches dry season like this one, usually we practice at the end of the year, because in the mid-year where there's too much rain, we find our tomatoes at such an hour it gets all rotten. I've taken tomatoes as an enterprise alone, a level where now I've assured that I've got a bit of skills where you see my tomatoes now at the dry season, they look still green, which means they have retained their naturally growth. The skills at the moment I've realized a great change, that the tomatoes I'm raising now are different from those ones I do practice on those years. But now at the moment I can now say harvest. At the current season now, those who were practiced and even some few I gave the seedlings, their tomatoes have died at the moment. They haven't coming to me to report that they have not succeeded. And when I look at my tomatoes still, I've tried to manage it, which means I've devoted that interest where I'm trained and controlled a bit of it, and you can see I'm harvesting some tomatoes, which has really given me a great interest, and I'm doing it again. The benefit of the horticulture is that gradually I'm now realizing that I'll be having a capital to generate now money, which will also be secured to me and do my work in large quantity, which means it will take me to marketing now. Because I was practicing very local and I sell within, which means I'll not see the market, and the next trip, now I can even see a lorry will come to buy my things.
My name is Brian Chivirige. I'm the farm manager at Gayaza High School and still the farm instructor. We are going to talk about tomato growing, and firstly we are going to look at nursery bed management. And a nursery bed is a place where we raise our seedlings from before we transplant them to the main garden. And when you organizing a structure of a nursery bed, there are considerations you must put in mind. For instance, when you're establishing a nursery bed, it should be near a water source, it should be near where you're going to plant, and it should be on soils that are uniform, have a uniform texture. The nursery bed, you also consider its orientation. If my sun is coming from the east and my east is this side and the west is this, now I put the bed perpendicular to the sun, such that when the sun is coming from the east, it can light up the crops on this other side, and when it has gone to the west, it can still light up the crops on this other side. Now, that helps me to get all my plants get light. If I organize my bed in a bad orientation, for instance, if my sun is coming from the east and then I put my bed in a horizontal way, the sun will reach the far side of the crops and also this other side of the crops, but the middle will not be getting the sun, and that will cause some of my seedlings not to grow well because they are not receiving the sun.
After setting the slab clearly, and then for us to sterilize the soil, here first we use the grass we put, we burn, that is by heating the soil to sterilize it. But there are two ways. Sometimes we use organic chemicals. At the moment we are not at that stage. We use direct sun heat to burn the grass for sterilizing the soil. After sterilizing the soil, and then you will let it cool as you do it today, and then next tomorrow, that's when you will now come. And then you make the slabs to be clear, and then you also spray the ashes. It is called agro. And you will get a stick to measure your distance like this one here, and the nursery bed 6 inches. I just put a distance of this, a tree like this one, and make a hole, a punch up to the line end, and then sow my seedlings. After sowing the seedlings, and then I cover the whole thing clearly where there is no down and up. And then I spray water heavily on it. At least it reaches 6 inches down. Now do covering the nursery bed, putting this. I just put this purposely because of termites, because I've selected this place near an anti-termite hill, where it is also a fertile area, and anytime they also come and disturb this grass. You can see it here. And then I put the grass in a certain level where there is also air moving around. After covering it, from there I don't spray the water again now. That water at the power day is enough now. Now the heat and the humidity down will cause the seedlings to germinate very fast. And then you find after 4 days, the seeds are ready. Now from here now, I don't pour no more water, and then only keep checking until the germination is now ready. I remove this. When I've checked they are okay now, I remove this one slowly. As you can see, this trees protect also on the ground. That's how I remove it when the nursery is now ready. That's how it's done here. Now from there now I begin now water irrigation control, and that is the major target in controlling the nursery bed now. From there now I will have to come in the morning around at 9, check whether the slab has dried like this one here. That's when I will be spreading water and in a quantity that is not too much, just slightly, in the form of this one here. You can see water. Just the soil so that it absorbs, and then it keeps the slab very wet. Only water control. So like during the wet season, I spray the water 3 times. In the morning, midday, maybe in the evening. But when it reaches dry season like this one, I spray it the water around 4 times. Around at 8, and then at around 11, and then at 2, then at 4 also, to control water drying, so it's not make a cracks on the nursery bed. So our problem here is just to wet it only. That is the major issue we are failing on nursery bed controlling. Major part in the nursery bed preparation, the water irrigation control, which is sometimes letting us down when you pour too much water, and that water will cause these things to grow very high. When you reach nearing the period of planting, and then you find that the tomatoes will begin wilting because there's too much water. Now when tomatoes grow after 7 days to 8, like this size, that's where you find we now use the chemicals here. The spraying is a bit at a higher level, where I find the small drops dropping on the baby face of the tomatoes, not attacking the whole tomato down there. That's the spraying will be on the baby face, which will protect the insecticides on the nursery bed. That's how I'm doing it. When now they have reached 2 weeks, they have 3 to 4 leaves. That's when I will do heavy spraying. It will go down to the stems, where it will also protect the fungal disease. But at the moment, you find it is at higher level. That's for insecticides. And that's how I control my nursery bed, and then it makes it very successful up to the planting. Now from here, when my nursery bed is now 3 weeks, that's 21 days. Because of this organic I used and controlling it very well, it will be ready for planting now.
Action. Okay, in nursery bed management, there is what we call hardening off. Hardening off is a practice of making the crop ready for the main garden. In hardening off, there are 2 main activities that happen. One is you reduce the frequency of watering, then the other is reducing the amount of cover on top of the nursery. Hardening off helps the plant to get used to the open field environment. Now, when I'm hardening off, I consider one, frequency of watering, and then reducing the cover. So in tomato growing, when my seedlings get 3 weeks old and they have like 1 or 2 weeks to transplanting, I expose them to the normal environment that exists in the field. So what happens is, one, I reduce the amount of cover on top of my nursery, and then I reduce the frequency of watering. If, let's say, when they were 1 week old or before they germinated, I was watering twice a day, after 3 weeks of germination, I reduce the frequency of watering to twice a day, and after 3 weeks to 4 weeks, I reduce it to once a day. So it means instead of watering in the morning, mid-morning to the evening, I do water morning to and then evening, all evening, depending on the period. When they're about to be transplanted, I water once. Okay, then the amount of cover, when they become 3 weeks old and they're about to be transplanted, I reduce the amount. Instead of having a dense cover, I go on removing some top mulches, or it can be dry grass, it can be bamboo, anything that allows light to pass through. So I go reducing that amount of cover to make my plants exposed to the normal environment that exists in the main garden. There are other nursery bed management practices which are quite important when you are raising a nursery bed. One of them is, when you're planting in a nursery bed, you have to plant in lines. Yeah, that helps you to know the amount of seedlings that you are raising, and then two, it helps you to avoid competition for nutrients. The other is what we call rodging. When you're growing tomatoes, you have to remove the tomatoes which are off type, or anything that is growing in a nursery bed which is not a tomato. So that is called rodging. So you do that in order to avoid having competition for nutrients, or having things that are growing in a nursery which are not tomatoes. So you have to keep on rodging or removing the unwanted seedlings in your nursery bed to make sure the seedlings that you want are growing quite very well and have a steady growth. Right, about tomato varieties, as a farmer you can choose what varieties you want to grow. You may choose to grow what we call determinant or indeterminate. Determinants are grown for one season and then you harvest and that's gone. Or you can choose to grow the indeterminate. The indeterminate grows for more than 2 seasons. So you can harvest it for 2 years. That's the indeterminate. But what we always do in Uganda, we grow the determinant. This is a determinant. You harvest it for only 2 months. Okay? And this variety is called Tengero. I obtain my seed from either Simlo seed or East African seed. The main importance of growing the determinant is that when the crop is growing, you can easily look after it, give it a lot of manure in order to obtain a lot of yield at the end of the season. But then the indeterminate, you can't grow it without a lot of cash on you to inject in the project, because you need a lot of manure, you need a lot of watering. When it gets to the dry season, you need water, and that means you need to get people to carry for you water from a swamp or something to come and water your plants. Now, okay, the other thing when you choosing the tomatoes to grow is either to choose a hybrid or a non-hybrid. In Uganda, we mainly grow hybrids because they are they give you a lot of yield at the end of the season. The non-hybrid varieties have been grown by the past generation and they are not doing good. So what we do is we choose the hybrid because of the high yield that they give you at the end of the season. They are also, when the scientists are making them, they look at things like pest resistance, disease resistance, salinity resistance. So these hybrids are bred well to weather those stresses that are in the environment. So they are easy to grow and they give you a lot of yield. Though they're non-hybrid, they are susceptible to some of those, to pests, they are susceptible to diseases, water stress and stuff like that. Other things that help you determine what tomato do you want to grow are things like pest and disease resistance, drought tolerance, soil salinity tolerance, potential yield, the market size and hardness. For instance, if I have a garden in Arua and I want to sell my tomatoes in Kampala, I have to go for that variety which is hard. So it has a hard cuticle. So that means it is very easy for me to transport my tomato from Arua or West Nile to Kampala without damaging it. Then the other thing is the size. If I want to get maximum profit from my tomatoes, I should go out for those tomatoes that give you a big size tomato that is easily acceptable by the market. Then also, as you go in for tomatoes, you have to look at the market. Do you have the market for the tomatoes? You can't grow tomatoes without a market. You need to know how many people in your village really need tomatoes on a daily basis. You might be growing tomatoes and you are 1,000 people in the village and all the 1,000 people are growing tomatoes. You can't go for tomatoes. It means you don't have any market. Everyone has a tomato in their house. Then the other thing is the potential yield. If my tomato here is giving me 5 kilograms in a season, and there are other tomatoes that give 10, why don't I go for that 10? Okay. So then the other thing is drought. If I'm in a region where there is less rainfall, I have to buy those tomatoes that are resistant to the drought because they are well suited for that environment and they will give me maximum yield though there is drought. Then the pests and diseases also, you have to look out for those tomatoes that are bred to be resistant to some diseases. For instance, here we have bacterial wilt. So we go for tengeru because it's a bacterial wilt resistant variety. Then also there are other pests that affect the tomatoes like whitefly, the American bollworm, the cutworm. You have to look out for those tomatoes that are highly resistant to such pests and diseases. As a farmer, before I start a season or before I plant, I need to look out for seeds which are healthy, because it is from the healthy seeds that I can get a healthy plant, from a healthy plant to a good yield. Now, when I go to the market, I just don't buy anything that I come across. I have to look out for those seed companies that supply quality seed. So that's about supplier selection. So for instance, in Uganda, we have suppliers like East African Seed, we have Simlo Seed, we have Gromo, we have Victoria, there are many. But as a farmer, I just don't buy from any, you know. And also, the other thing is that I consider a container carrying my seed. Always, seeds in sachets like this are easy to be duplicated. And most of the time when we plant them in the nursery bed, they don't grow, because a layperson can always duplicate it and then put any seed in it and label it tomato, yet it is not tomato. So for me as a farmer, when I go out to the market, I look out for containers, because this container is very hard to duplicate. It's metallic, and yeah, always, unless the seed company is the one that did a wrong thing. But before I plant, I also do some germination test. Then the other thing is about the color of the seed. For instance, tomatoes in my container are supposed to be pinkish because they are covered with a pesticide for proper storage, and then when you plant them, they're not affected by the pests. So after buying my seeds, I look at my color of my seeds, the shape of the seeds, because now if I want to plant tomato seeds and I find my tomato seeds are black, they are black and out of shape, you know, they are not small pear shaped, they are round. Those are not tomato seeds, so I just dispose those ones off. Then seed purity is also another thing to consider. So what you do is you plant, like you just randomly plant and see how many come out and they are tomatoes. If you plant and then at the end of the day you see there is some hot pepper or there is some sweet pepper growing, just know that your container is contaminated with other seeds.
Yeah, in horticulture practicing, you must first know content of the soil and the water control. Now, in our practice of tomatoes, here I apply some artificial manure. I use cow dung and some fertilizers are mixed and then they ferment for 3 days. After this one, I apply here to retain the soil fertility. And secondly, it also helps the tomatoes during the dry season. They will retain water moisture down there. And then adding to that one, in controlling water moisture, I also apply this mulching grass, which you are seeing here, to help the tomatoes. And then the second part is it helps the tomatoes in diseases like the fungal disease, which comes right from the root nodules, and then it penetrates internally and you can't see it with our technical eyes. And then that's when you realize it, when the tomatoes are wilting and drying. That's the effects of the mold, the fungal disease. And when you do mulching like this one, you'll find that you would have controlled your tomatoes from such, and then continue spraying, and then they will be in a better situation like the ones I've raised on already, they're already fruiting. That's through this practice, and then it keeps the soil very fertile. Next time when you practice, the tomatoes will be bigger than what you started first.
About soil fertility management, there are things that we have to consider to either use fertilizer or manure. Now, Gaza High School being a mixed farm, we go for manure because it is cheaper and it is readily available and it is environmentally friendly. Now, that organic manure has to be mixed in the soil. Okay, so what he's doing is mixing cow dung which has decomposed into the soil. We mix it to make sure that our soil is enriched. Tomatoes being shallow feeders, like they feed just on the topsoil. They need a lot of soil nutrients in that topsoil. So what he's doing is mixing the manure with the topsoil to make sure that we provide a lot of nutrients that are sufficient for proper growth for our tomato. And the quantity of manure depends on what you have. You might be having less and then you have a big land. So what you can do is you can use a handful of the manure and put it on your planting hole. So this is our planting hole. We have already mixed it with manure. So it's now transplanting the tomato and covering it where the planting hole is. And you can see right now we had red soil then, but now we have a mixture of red soil and then dark soil because we've mixed it with the humus which we got from the manure. So after that, he's going to cover just near the tomato to make sure we don't lose a lot of water through evaporation. And also what you do after planting, you remove excess leaves there and then, because when you don't remove them, there will be evaporation, transpiration, and you don't want that. When there's a lot of transpiration, the plant will easily dry. Where I'm standing is a manure pit, and in this pit we put there cow dung till it decomposes. Now you can't apply fresh cow dung on tomatoes. One reason is because they will affect the plant. They do cause what we call the burning effect. Because they haven't decomposed, when you put them near to the tomato, they start decomposing and they produce a lot of gas which burns the plant. Now, when the plant is burnt, then you can't get any harvest. So what we do is we put the cow dung in a pit like this, and then we let it be here like for 2 months till decomposition is done. Now what shows you that the manure has completely decomposed is when you put there a stick and you touch it, it is not warm, it is just cold. Okay, so that is a testing way. The other thing is you open part of it and then you put your hand there and you can't feel the warmth. So that shows you that there is no more bacterial activity in the cow dung, and then you can use it. Okay, as a farmer, you might not have enough resources to keep on buying fertilizers for your garden or for your tomatoes. Now, you can be having a mixed farm, or there might be other farmers that have cows, but they don't use the cow dung. So what you do as a farmer, you liaise with them and you get cow dung from them and the urine, and then you make a manure. Now, what I'm going to show to you is a manure that we've got from a mixture of cow dung and urine, which is very good for the tomatoes. And this, you mix it in proportions. If I have a wheelbarrow of cow dung, I can add there 2 jerry cans, 40 liters of urine or water. You might not be able to obtain the urine, but you are able to obtain the water. So you make it, you make that mixture, you mix cow dung with urine, and then after you can apply it on your crops, and they will be able to obtain the nutrients from it. The slope of my lands in relation to construction of my broad beds is in, I have to construct a bed perpendicular to my slope. I see my slope is running downwards, and I have to align my beds in a way that prevents runoff. Since they are raised, when the water is a lot, it won't flow off to another bed, so it will have to settle in the channels. You can see the channels in between. The channels are the ones that separate one bed from the other. So my relief in relation to broadbed construction is perpendicular, and that helps me to encourage infiltration and discourage runoff during the rainy season.
When they have at least 3 leaves, I'll begin planting now. And the planting process is, I'll begin uprooting those big size ones, which are ready, and then leave the small one doing uprooting. And the other major thing here is we don't do heavy intensive weeding. We just come and pick those small weeds inside. It takes around 21 days for transplanting. And when you do a selection of the nursery bed site in a fertile area, you find that the viable seeds will grow very fast, and that's why you see we begin transplanting the other bigger ones which were viable before the rest. When you have prepared the land is already like this one here, the spacing is 40 by 40, and then I have to excavate the holes from there and then transplant, begin planting. After finishing spreading water, and then next tomorrow I will cover the seedlings with the grass, just a size of equivalent following the line. Then this grass will stay for 3 days. You find that the moisture would have already retained, and then the seedlings have new roots now down, apart from the one uprooted from the nursery bed. Now when they have new roots, now that's when I will open now. Now from there, the seedlings here will stay for 2 weeks. They will begin showing new root nodules up here, meaning that they are ready for weeding. But the weeding is not that only 1 week you begin doing. The tomatoes will tell me that they are ready for weeding, which means they are now hungry in needing another new food item to their size. And then in this action, I leave a hole, a basin. Whenever it rains, it will lodge water around for these tomatoes here. When there's no water, that water which has lodged around in that basin will keep it growing very fast. And then from that 2 weeks ahead, when it is showing me that they are ready for weeding, that's when I apply now manure side by side. And this one here, beginning in weeding now. There the weeding is done once, and then do mulching. Now in that weeding, when the 2 weeks has elapsed and I've done the weeding, immediately I will also take part in mulching now. In that extent of reaching 1 month, that meaning mulching for the first plot should have been ready done and the seedlings are already growing. So for the fruiting, you find that when those other viable seeds germinate faster, they grow very fast as you control it very well, and the soil area you do for nursery bed is very fertile. You'll find it will begin fruiting there immediately. As you do transplanting here, 1 week you find that the other tomato growing has already fruit, the first layer. Tomato doesn't need too much water. When you find there is too much water, the tomatoes will wilt and then a lot of diseases will begin attacking, because it grows very healthy. You may think it is okay, but that's already a disease to tomatoes. And that's the fine stay identification where we are trying to manage it, and if we control it very well, that we shall be a better growers of tomatoes, and it will put us into a better market.
About pest and disease prevention in tomatoes, there are considerations that you make. For instance, there is crop rotation. In crop rotation, you don't plant crops from the same family in the same season after one, in the same field after one season. So what you do, if today you planted tomatoes here, then you can't plant hot pepper here, you can't plant Irish potatoes here. Those crops that fall in the same, it's called the Solanium family. You don't plant them in the same field. So what you do, like if today I planted tomatoes here, next season I'll plant maybe beans, because beans are legumes. So that helps me to break what we call the disease cycle. So I'm preventing. Then also we do disease and pest identification. Now, a tomato farmer should check on his plant every week, at least once, to see if there are new entrants or new pests that might be on the leaves. So when you're checking on your tomatoes, you have to check a leaf by leaf. So what this farmer is doing is really checking on his plants to see if there are any pests or disease-causing organisms. And when you're checking, you have to flip the leaf to see any organisms on it. So when you see that there is any organism, so the organism might be white flies, they might be beetles, they might be cutworms, American bollworms. You check them on a weekly basis. So because when you check, then you can know how to control them or how to prevent them to increase in number. When you see there are very many now, you find a good mean of controlling them. Then also I look at staking. Our tomatoes are very well staked. What we do is we have lines. We plant our tomatoes in lines for easy staking. So we bring trees every time and we make our crops upright. Now when you stake, the crop is not in contact with the ground, meaning there will be no transmission of pathogens on the plant. So since we stake and we prune, we always cut the down parts, so the plant will grow well without any interference from a pathogen. Then pruning, what he's doing is pruning. Pruning is you remove the excess, and when you prune, you also make it easy for you, one, to do the spraying. Like now the spraying is very well seen. These plants are well spread and every leaf has the chemical on it. Okay, then also when you prune, the pests are exposed to the environment. Now the environment, instead of hiding them, you know, the pests and disease-causing organisms, they dwell well when they are in a conducive environment. Now when you expose them to the sun, they will run away. So that's the importance of pruning. Now the other thing about pest and disease management or prevention is what we call rodging. Rodging is removing the off-type plants from your field. The off-type plant can be that tomato that you didn't, the type. Maybe my tomatoes are tongero, but when I see a honey maker growing here or money maker growing here, I remove it because it might be susceptible to a disease which is now, which tongero is resistant to. So in order to avoid disease coming into my field, I remove the off-type plant from my garden. Then the other thing is soil sterilization. Soil sterilization is basically the heating of soil. You can heat soil by putting it in a drum and burning it. Or you can burn dried grass like this. You spread it like it's spread like mulch, and then you burn the whole garden. Now that is soil sterilization. It helps you kill the pathogens within the soil. Now when we are going to spray our crops, the person who is going to do the mixing of the chemicals or the spraying is supposed to put on safety wear. You put on a mask on the nose, and then you put on gloves, and you have this coat. This is an overcoat. The chemical does not get on your body directly, and you have other set of clothes on you. So we use the coat, we have the mask, then we have the gloves. Then also if someone has a problem or allergies, you can put on the glasses so that the chemical does not enter into your eyes, does not come into contact with your eyes. So when we are mixing, depending on what you control. So here when we are spraying, we use two chemicals. We use Indofil M45, which is a fungal control chemical, and then we use Rocket. This is an insecticide or a pesticide. So we mix both of them together to utilize labor effectively. You wouldn't first spray the fungicide and then you come back again spray the pesticide. Since they are not counteractive, like they don't have an effect on each other, you can spray them together. And as you mixing, you measure the quantities. These are 20 liters of water. The container is 20 liters. So I can say I'm putting 100 grams of the fungicide and then 20 mils of the pesticide. Now all those help us to maintain our costs. So you can understand the cost of production, so if I know I'm going to spray 20 times and I'm supposed to buy this, so how much will I be using? So before I do even the project, I can quantify everything and I know I need this amount of capital for me to run through the season. Yes. The other thing you can do as you spray, you can also add a fertilizer. So the fertilizer can be a foliar spray.
After transplanting, I first spray the seedlings in the nursery bed. From the nursery bed, when it has stayed here for 1 week, I will also spray again. So the spreading of the medicine here, it's concurrently after every 1 week. The spraying here is different from the nursery bed because of the control of the fungal disease down there. You can see I spread this way and then take this way for the flowerings to kick off the flying disease. And then the medicine should be applied evenly and touch the stems of the tomatoes down there, and then the leaves down. These are the areas where you find the flying diseases, and the other ones will lay eggs here on the leaves, and then behind it, that's why you see I sprayed on top and behind it and on the stem. That's how the spraying is done on the field, and you find this way it will flush away the flying diseases which will sit on the fruits, on the tomatoes, and you will apply it a bit thick in the spraying, and the spraying is done after every 1 week. You find that tomatoes that have grown, they have now their fruits like this one here, they become heavy, and that's why you see they're all lying down. It's already a dry season, but still they are growing wet, and now when they reach the stage of maturity, you now find the beginning ripening. And as we now use proper drugs for maintaining, the tomatoes don't get rotten, and then you leave it to ripen up to this stage here.
About harvesting, there are things that you consider when you are going to harvest. For instance, where is your market? When your market is far away from the garden, you have to harvest your tomatoes when they are mature, but they are not so ripened. For instance, if my garden is in Gayaza and I'm selling my tomatoes in Kampala, I harvest a tomato like this, which is just yellowish, but it's mature. That means during transportation, they won't get bruises and they won't get damaged, okay? But then if my market is in Gayaza, right here in the school, I can harvest a tomato, which is like this. My market is just 500 meters away from here, and I can take them without getting any bruises. Now, there are what we call determinants of maturity. A tomato is mature when it is, by that time it gets white green, okay? White green is when they start having some yellow coming in the green, so that is white green. So you, in determining whether a crop is mature, you look at the color, change in color, you look at the size. So you can't say this tomato here is mature enough for the market. This is very small.
After harvesting, garden in one place, and then you take them under a shed where you will go and grading them now accordingly. And here our tomatoes have 3 grades now. This is the first class we have, and then this is the second one that they have here. And then this is the smaller one, is the 3rd grade now. So you will pack now in a box according to their grade. Now when you take to the market, and then they take the other first grade, and then they take the second and the 3rd also. So the price will depend on their grades accordingly, and then you use the same box now in piling them. When you take this one, the first class, and then they will hurry on this one here, they will buy it, and the 2nd grade, and then the 3rd one. So that when they begin selling, there is a variation in selling, but everything they buy. Now, the good thing in the 1st grade is that there will be very few, but they will enter into the box faster than maybe the 2nd grade and the 3rd grade follows. So the 2nd grade takes many of tomatoes than the 1st grade. And secondly, you who is a farmer, if you always produce 1st grade, and then you'll have a good market because you'll be selling at high price. And then the major market is in Koboko town, but at current, even Sudan border here is greater than Koboko town, so people go there. Those who are here in the small wholesales, they come and buy this one at home. They even take to Sudan, and if it is, I produce now in large quantity, I take direct to the town, because those are the people who can buy in bulk. But the ones within here, they buy in small, they go tomorrow, they come again, as I do continue buying, and they also save me in doing other work as I do at this one here. But my sorting here, if it is, the boxes are now full, then I call a transport system, take to the town for those who are buying in bulk. Otherwise, in tomatoes, the market is there, and it is every day. Yeah, my advice is that farmers who would like to grow tomato, and it is been on the right chance now where I'm doing harvesting, and we tried within them, some failed at that particular moment, so that they get experience where I've managed to come with this one here, and it could be better. Now they could learn, and we go with them together. So that's how it is. I've tried my best with the small knowledge I've acquired from ZOA and Seaford, and that has pushed me, and I can show a box now of tomatoes, which I used not to be selling.